Welcome to the Lift and Glow Fitness Podcast, the health and fitness podcast for women who want to look great and feel great for good. Whether your goal is to lose weight, build muscle, or you just want to be the healthiest version of yourself, the advice that we share here is going to help you do that by building habits that stick without sucking the fun out of your life. Before we get stuck in today's episode, please make sure to hit subscribe so that you don't miss any future episodes from us. So one thing that one of my online clients asked us to talk about on the podcast specifically, and I think it's a great topic for us to discuss because it probably isn't spoken about enough, is menopause and perimenopause.
Yeah.
It's much more spoken about now, but there's still not enough women know or understand the perimenopause or menopause. So obviously I know that you work with, well, you've done a menopause specialist.
Yeah, I did the Girls Gone Strong menopause specialism.
And you do work with, well, I work with many women who perimenopause, menopause, and I know you do too.
Yeah, I do.
So I thought it'd be good for us to discuss, because every single woman, this is what I don't think people appreciate it, and I didn't appreciate this either until like the last couple of years, is that it's not something that we should just like palm off until we get older.
No. Definitely not.
Because every single woman is going to go through this at some point in their life. And sometimes you can be quite young when you go through it. Other times you might be older. But it's still something we need to be aware of, because the things we do now matter.
Yeah, and they will massively impact how you go through menopause.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't think like when you're in your 20s and 30s, it's just something that's a distant future. And I don't think that like, I know now, but the impact of what we do, our habits, our behaviours, you know, strength training, that all affects how it's gonna, how you know, it will feel for you. And so yeah, I thought it would be good. So what do you think? Let's start off with what people are struggling with in terms of like when they start reaching the perimenopause.
So I think a lot more women are actually aware that that is potentially what's happening now. And it's from like sort of, it can be late 30s as well. It's not a 40 plus thing. Obviously, the majority of women will be in the 40s when they experience that. But I think more and more women are recognising the signs now. And previously, we just thought they were going mad.
100%.
And I think now definitely what I'm seeing is there's a lot more women coming to me who aren't quite at that stage but are wanting to get themselves ready for going into that. So there's a lot more education around sort of your lifestyle choices, your diet, you know, exercising, focusing on managing stress and things like that. They are going to make that journey a little bit easier for you. And it's so individual as well. That's the other thing I've definitely found, is that there's no two women experience it the same.
It's like the menstrual cycle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Every single person.
Yeah, it's so different.
Yeah.
Some people breeze through it and some women are absolutely floored by it.
Yeah.
And
it can change a lot. So your symptoms might start off differently and change throughout the whole process. Yeah. It's definitely much more spoken about. So I remember my mum rang me, like, I think it was last year now. She's like, you know, like on Loose Women, they're talking about strength training and, you know, helping with the menopause and stuff. She was like, none of that information used to be even discussed. So it is good that there's more out there. What are some signs and symptoms? Like, how would people know when that is kind of beginning? Because obviously people used to think they were going mad.
Yeah.
So what is actually, you know, likely to happen? I know it's not all the same, but what could happen?
So the sorts of things you see is sort of irregular periods. So that might, or a difference in, like, you could experience heavier periods, more irregular cycles. The night sweats thing and the hot flushes, that actually usually comes a little bit further down the line. But that tends to be when people realise, because there's little things like little like mood swings, like differences in mood. But that can also be linked to the menstrual cycle anyway, can't it? So it's like, it's things like that. But I think generally women don't really still know, because there's not really a test that can say like you are now sort of
perimenopause.
You might start to experience some like hormonal fluctuations and stuff, but it is hard to tell. It's still hard to tell. But even like, I think a lot of women are still probably further down the line than they think when they actually realise that they are there.
Yeah.
From what sleep as well is another thing that tends to be impacted.
From what I understand about it is obviously during our menstrual cycle. So when we are having regular cycles, we have this pattern of increase in hormones and reduction in hormones. And that pattern is pretty much
it's
regular,
repeated,
repeatable. And so we can predict, like, I know that you and I can both predict, like,
I know when, like,
I know when I'm going to start feeling cranky. I know when I need to have chocolate in the house. I know when me training is probably going to be on a little bit of a downturn. Like, I know I can foresee in the next 4 weeks when I can push and when I can't. But when you get towards the perimenopause or go into perimenopause, that all becomes a little bit more erratic.
Yeah, and for some people, it's impossible for them to track. So some people as well can just sort of don't really experience very much of that. But for other people, once you start losing the regularity of your cycle, all the things that, like we were saying, you've used for tracking just go out the window, because it can, and it can be really difficult, because then I know, like, for instance, this week, you know this week I've been on a bit of a roller coaster, but I knew what it was, so that sort of helps a bit. And it's just like, if I can just get through this next few days, I'll be okay. If that has happened to me in 2 weeks' time, I would be like, I wouldn't have anything to pin it to, if you know what I mean. I think that's the difference.
Yeah, that's it. So because it's unpredictable, because the fluctuations are unpredictable.
There's no explanation for it.
To you, you're like, I'm not due on my period. Why am I feeling like this? Am I struggling with my mental health? Or, why am I getting these feelings when it's not at the normal time? Because we know, we should know our patterns. I mean, if you don't understand your cycle, then that's something to look into.
There's a lot of people still don't track it, though. No, there's so many people don't track it.
And even if you don't track your cycle, I think it's still important to know. Just think about where you are up to. Know when you last. You don't have to use an app. You don't need to count your days. I've been through all that. Don't do that anymore. But I still know. I know when I'm about to ovulate. I know when I'm due on my period. I can tell by my body.
Yeah.
So it's good to know that, because then when things start feeling a bit amiss, or there's different things happening, you can start to understand, maybe that's it could be perimenopause, especially if you're getting towards, I mean, it can happen in your 30s.
Yeah. But it's predominantly sort of
after 40. Yeah.
And also there's things like thinning hair, skin going dry, changes in skin. Itchy skin is massive. So I already now take a daily antihistamine.
Yeah.
So I know, because it's the drop in your estrogen.
Right.
So so your skin goes drier. And also at a time where, women experience this at a time when a lot of them have got sort of children that are at that sort of like challenging age.
Careers.
They're probably in a more senior position at work with more stresses in their life. And then they start to notice not only changes in how they feel, but how they look as well. Mm-hmm. And you can't underestimate that sort of changes to your skin. And the women now are all taking the collagen supplements and all of this stuff, but you do start to feel different. And I think a lot of women tend to feel like they lose their identity a little bit.
I was just about to say, like a bit of an identity crisis.
Almost like slips away. And it's like the women I'm working with now are sort of wanting to, and you can't like reverse aging, can you? But just feel a little bit better going through the process, and do what they can do to try and manage the symptoms as best they can.
So what would we suggest to manage symptoms then?
So aside from obviously the medical side of things, which is completely outside the scope, isn't it, of what we do?
And it's tailored to each individual, and that's something to speak to your doctor about. Some people are fine to have HRT, others aren't.
And there's different types now.
Line, testosterone, estrogen, it all has to be.
There's different types now, and there's more natural based in this end, so for those who want a more natural based and stuff. But aside from that, your diet, your exercise, your sleep, and managing stress are massive, and it can't be underestimated. If you are someone who is in the obese category, you're more likely to suffer, particularly sort of the night sweats and the hot flushes and stuff like that, more so than someone who's not.
Yeah.
If you're on the sort of morbidly obese category, you are then at risk of not being able to get anything for it, sort of HRT, because you are a health risk. So it really does matter, because those people will suffer the worst and also not be able to get anything for it. Things like joint pain is massive for women going through menopause. Again, if you're carrying additional, excess weight, that feels worse. It's those like, and your sleep's interrupted anyway, which makes everything feel a bit harder.
So this is the thing, the things that you just mentioned then, they are the fundamentals of living a healthy life.
Yes.
Nutrition, exercise, sleep,
Mediterranean style diet.
Yeah, stress management. Those, did I say stress?
Stress. Yeah. It's a new one.
I think I said stress.
I think we knew what you meant.
I was like, did I?
Yeah.
So those things, stress management and all those other things, they are the fundamentals of living a healthy life. And so they are important, not just during perimenopause, all throughout life, from when we're younger, all throughout our whole life, those things are important. But one thing that is very clear is that during perimenopause, those things are so much harder to do.
Yeah.
And like the sleep thing definitely is an issue, because when you're struggling with sleep, so if you get a night sweats or like insomnia or even
restless leg is another thing. A lot of women get restless leg.
Or if you're getting bits of anxiety and stuff that can come alongside perimenopause, if you're struggling with those things, that makes sleep harder. And when we struggle with sleep, that makes nutrition choices harder. It means you're more likely to drink alcohol. It means you're more likely to make, poor nutrition choices. Right. And you're also not going to feel like going to the gym, like energy-wise.
You're going to be less active.
Yeah, you're going to feel less active. So I think that, even though it's harder, and it definitely is harder, it's something that you really will want to push yourself to do, to make, because it's funny that those things that help with perimenopause are actually really difficult to do. Yeah. And we have to lean into them.
I know.
Even though it feels almost impossible. Like, I know that a few of the girls in the gym, like I've mentioned, I'm struggling with this and that, and I've had to drag myself here. And I'm like, well done, because that's going to benefit you more than staying at home, drinking coffee and, eating chocolate.
I know.
So I think that's like, it's like ironic in a way that those things are so hard to do, but they're the things that you need to do.
Yeah. I mean, I did have someone come speak to me and say, like, what do you suggest, in terms of like how I can like manage symptoms aside from sort of going to the doctors and medication. And I was like, well, you'd be looking at sort of your diet, your exercise. And they were like, it's basically nothing else. And I was like, unfortunately.
Magic wand.
Yeah. But it's like, it really does. And also as well, if you are active and you manage to keep yourself active and you get into the habit of doing that, it does have it has a positive impact on your sleep as well.
100%. So one of the girls from the gym, she trains at 7 a.m, and she said like coming to the gym in the morning means that like her, because is there like a body temperature issue with perimenopause?
Yeah, your body temperature does raise generally.
Because she was saying
I don't
something
know if that's
like
for everyone. I think that might.
Throughout the day, it manages her. Like, so hot flushes and stuff are much more better managed when she comes and trains in the morning. And then she also gets to sleep and stays asleep because she's worn herself out, like energy-wise. So it does, even though it's hard to do, it's going to help like with those symptoms that you're having.
I think there's so many people now who are just trying to set themselves up more. Like they're not waiting until they're in the middle of it. But you do get people who, a lot of the women I work with are sort of already there.
Yeah.
Some aren't, but some I'm getting more people coming to work with me who want to feel good as opposed to, want to look good just for a holiday or something like that. I think once you get to your late 30s, your early 40s, it's all about longevity then. And obviously the aesthetic goals are still there, amazing. Like they should never, and I'm not downplaying that, but the focusing on sort of how you feel and making sure that you are just functioning on like day to day as best you can. I think if you can sort the sleep issue, and that's the hardest thing, definitely, I think, because the more you try and sleep well, the harder it is, isn't it? And I think, there's a lot of like sleep trackers and stuff now. That to me would put more pressure on it.
So it definitely does, because I track my sleep with the Aura Ring, and Fran says to me, like, you're obsessed. I wake up in the morning and check my sleep.
Yeah.
And if it's like 6 hours 45, I'm like, I haven't had enough sleep. And then it does like get
it's something like that.
The sleep trackers can. But I think when it comes to sleep, one thing that I find women of that age love to do is a nice glass of wine.
And it doesn't help. It disrupts your sleep anyway, doesn't it? It really does.
I feel like a lot of the women who I work, not all of them, definitely not all of them, but a lot of the women who I work with who are over 40, do that having a glass of wine at the end of the day, or just not even drinking every day, but even every other day.
Yeah.
It's just the thing that a lot of them do. And again, it's winding down after a stressful day of work, not having young kids to have to get up in the night with anymore. So the
kids like teenagers or even young adults.
having a glass of wine's not a problem. You don't need, like unlikely you're going to need to drive anywhere, all of that stuff. So, and it's one thing that I always try and nip in the bud quickly, not just with those clients, with all clients, because we can't deny alcohol.
I know
has negative impact on us.
It has no health benefits.
It's not.
Unfortunately,
we wish there was nutrients in alcohol.
There is a grape in there somewhere, but
we both like alcohol. I'm 100% not against it. Like, I am part of a family who love a drink. I also love a drink, but it's not something that I would ever let myself slip into doing it every day. I've witnessed what happens to people, and it's not something that we would do. But I know that a lot of them are doing it to de-stress or to get to sleep. Yeah. So what would we say? Like, does alcohol even help with either of those things?
You hear that, and it's a myth, that thing, have a glass of wine to get, to knock me out sort of thing. But the quality of your sleep, you sleep, have like a really shallow sleep, don't you? So, or it's interrupted. But if you're already someone who suffers with the night sweats, it makes it worse. It makes that worse. It exacerbates that. So, and it can also be sort of, it's just a pure habit a lot of the time. It's like, that's what I do. It's me stress relief. Yeah. So it's trying to replace that with something else, like on certain days of the week. And then, as that crept up to being like 4 or 5 nights a week, can you pull it back to just 2? Yeah. And just have a little glass of wine on a Friday and a Saturday or something.
I completely appreciate that people think that alcohol relieves stress, because as soon as I have a sip of red wine, like your shoulders drop. Your shoulders drop, you feel all and you do get that sensation of feeling relaxed. Yeah. But that's because alcohol is a muscle relaxant. Yeah. And so physically, yes, you relax, but your brain, even though it might feel like your brain's relaxed, it's not. It's actually putting more stress on your brain and your body. So like you just said, you sleep, it's like a shallow sleep. Yeah. You don't go into deep, your body is trying to metabolize that alcohol all throughout the night. And so you will not reach deep sleep. Yeah. So you wake up feeling groggier. And then because you wake up feeling groggier, you make poor nutrition choices through the day, or it's really hard to get to the gym, or it's really hard to do your steps. And then you've had a difficult day because you've felt groggy all day, so you want another glass of wine. Yeah, and it's like just a big slippery slope. And like, if we're using wine to manage stress and to manage mental health, or not just wine, alcohol to manage stress and to manage mental health, I just think that's like, it's not the thing. No. Like,
it's finding other things that you can help to manage it.
There's many. You're keeping yourself more stressed, more anxious, more depressed by continually drinking.
Because your hormones are already on a bit of a roller coaster at that point.
Exactly.
You add in alcohol and it just makes it a little bit worse.
Well, alcohol affects, a standard menstrual cycle. Yeah. So if I have a boozy holiday, I'm struggling with period pains the next period. Like, so it's gonna, if you're already having hormonal fluctuations, I think it does actually directly affect estrogen, alcohol. Yeah. I'm sure, could be wrong. Don't hold me to that. But I'm sure it does. Or I've heard that somewhere. So if it's already causing issues with hormones, it's only gonna accelerate that, isn't it?
And the other thing that a lot of women at that stage find is that they start to, the body, they start to store fat in different areas, so differently. So they'll start to store fat. Most commonly, women will say, I never used to have, I never used to hold fat on my middle, but I do now. And it worries them as well, because we all hear all the time about holding fat around your middle is the worst place to hold it. And then there's a lot of health anxiety at the moment as well, because social media is so full of like the other day, oat milk is like poisonous for you. Do you know, like, and you're just like, people don't know like what to do for the best. And I find as well, you get a lot of women at that age that they're desperate to feel good. So they're intermittent fasting, they've got glucose monitors on, they're, you know, like they're panicking over all these different health things, when really you strip it back and go back to the basics and look at what's in your diet first. You know, there's little, they're like the cherry on top for me. Like, get the basics, and then if you're curious about monitoring those things, or if you've got something hereditary in your family and it's of a concern for you for that reason, by all means, like, explore. But for the average person, like, a balanced diet, get some protein. That's another thing, because protein wasn't really a thing.
No.
When, for women in their 40s, that era, we've all grown up on Weight Watchers, Slimming World. Protein, I didn't like.
Wasn't on the radar.
No, it wasn't a thing. Strength training certainly wasn't.
Yeah.
And like, in terms of diet, just sort of not cutting out all the things that you think you have to cut out to get through it.
Yeah.
More like the Mediterranean style diet is what's recommended.
Yeah. So, like, obviously people who are in the 40s and above now, there is a lot of like relationship with food issues, and like you say, all of this conflicting information everywhere. So no one ever mentioned protein, and now you're being told to eat protein. No one ever mentioned strength training. Strength training was a man's thing. And like, also muscle was very, it was very like, what's the word I'm trying to say? Like, it was like not a good thing for women.
It's almost
not
like
feminine.
a taboo thing, was it?
It wasn't feminine, was it, to have muscle?
It was something to be embarrassed about.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, you were manly or whatever for having muscle. Like, younger generations, I feel like it's not a bother, but older ones, definitely, it's not. It wasn't something that was on their radar. It was something that they avoided. So then to be told that they need to do this now.
I know.
Now, though, instead of doing it when they were in their 20s, which, you know, would help them, because, you know, having more muscle is good for longevity. It's good for health.
And metabolic health as well.
Metabolic health, yeah. You did say about women struggling with fat around the middle.
Yeah.
So this comes up a lot.
Yeah.
I get women messaging me who are over 40 and they say my metabolism has dropped. I'm gaining weight. It's all around my middle. And they're worried that, like, you know, that's just them now forever for the rest of their life. They're just going to keep gaining fat because their metabolism is on the floor. What would we say to that?
Your metabolism doesn't just drop off a cliff.
It's one of the biggest misconceptions.
There are some changes, but they are not. The degree of change is not enough
for you to really notice. This is the thing, like,
there's a lot of like sensationalizing, like, because that's a brilliant, like, you know, it's a hook, isn't it? Someone will be used. So especially there's certain big podcasts that keep having people on who are just spouting utter nonsense and people are clinging to it. But no, your metabolism does not just drop off a cliff when you hit 40. It doesn't. There's nothing magic about that birthday, or like there's nothing magic about your 40s at all that does that. If your body composition is a healthy, your body, so your muscle to fat ratio is in a good space, you've got a good diet and you're moving often, your metabolism will be great. Will be fine. Yeah.
This is like, because even when I was a kid growing up, it was just one of those things, your metabolism slowed down as you get older. Like, I know that. And to an extent, there's some truth in it. But I think people think that it, like you said, falls off a cliff.
Yeah.
But it's a tiny percentage each year. And you can really not necessarily reverse, but help that by building muscle.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say that's predominantly linked to the fact that you start to lose muscle mass from your late 30s, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's about
35 I think.
Now, isn't it? Yeah. 35, you start to lose your muscle and bone, your bone density. But that is what it is. So if you are strength training and you're getting a lot of protein into your diet and you're doing all those things, you're going to help to keep that managed because you maintain your metabolic health then. So it's like not like it drops off a cliff and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, building muscle is going to help you have a better metabolism.
When you dig into the reason for it, it is the loss of muscle that starts to cause the issue.
Yeah, exactly.
But even that, it's not catastrophic. It's definitely been built up to be more than it is.
Yeah. And it's like you said, it's not that you can't do anything about it. You can, like if you keep strength training, if you keep focusing on muscle growth, then, your metabolism is going to be absolutely fine. It's not, this is what I tend to say to everyone, is that your metabolism isn't the issue. It's what you are actually doing. What are you eating? Are you even moving? You work at a desk job. You're not doing any form of exercise. So you're not holding on to, you probably are losing muscle as you get older. Yeah. You're not doing anything to mitigate that. No. And your nutrition's up the wall. And it's don't blame your metabolism. Yeah. Look at what you're actually doing every day.
And you can improve it as well. So a lot of the girls that I've been working with me who are in their 40s, some are in their 50s, and have just started strength training. And when you first start strength training, you can build a decent amount of muscle because you get your beginner's gains that we're all so jealous of. Yeah. But you can really, it's not too late. So I always, the amount of people who I've chatted to, I wish I'd done it there. It's not too late. You can still do that, and you can still change your body composition. You can still change your diet, and you can still start moving. You can build strength. There's no cut off, is there?
No, definitely not. My mom started strength training at 60.
Yeah.
She started lifting weights at 60 and now she's doing deadlifts, RDLs, rows, she's getting stronger.
Yeah.
And she could have easily been put off and said she was too old, but she didn't allow that for herself. She wanted to stay fit and strong as she got older. And obviously she's already been through the menopause and stuff like that. It's not about that. It's just about being, she doesn't want to struggle as she gets older.
Well, it's little things I always say with strength training. It's things if you can squat, you can get yourself up and down off a chair. If you can overhead press, you can get something, you can pick something. Yeah. You want to be able to get the lid off something if you get up and down stairs. And it's about functional, it's being you grow. I think I saw something recently. It was growing old is inevitable, but being frail isn't.
Oh, love that.
And it's
absolutely love that.
So you're gonna grow old. Your body's gonna change, your skin's gonna change, all of that. But that doesn't mean you have to be a frail little old lady who you don't. I'm not gonna. I see, you can't bulletproof yourself, but I see myself as training for my old lady self.
Oh, same.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I literally want to be 105 throwing my grandkids around. That's a goal of mine, because I just think I don't want to waste away in an armchair. I've seen a grandparent do that, and just kind of literally wither away, and that's not what I want for myself. No. I want to be active and about and make the most of my life. And I think there's so much that we can do. A lot of people, I'm too old to get started now, I'm over 40. I'm thinking, how would you think you're old? You're not even halfway through your life.
Well, that's what I was going to say then. You're probably going to live for another 40, possibly 50 years.
Exactly, and you're going to live uncomfortably. Yeah.
Even if you start strength training, like your mum did at 60, you can really get strong. It's
I feel like my mum, since she started strength training, she has less back issues. We had to overcome those back issues during the strength training. Yeah. We had to but she has much less back pain. She's way more strong. Things in general life, like you say, opening a jar.
Yeah.
We lose grip strength, we lose strength and muscle as we get older.
Well, grip strength is directly linked to longevity as well, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So we need that. Yeah. And, even just, I feel happy that she's capable. Do you know, she can go to the shop, she can carry a shop, and she, she's still getting about. And for some people who are 65, they might feel completely finished, whereas she's thriving.
Yeah, she needs to get to Lift and Glow, don't they? I know, they feel like that.
You need to get in the over 50s class with me, mum.
Yeah.
You mentioned briefly before glucose monitors.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned fasting.
Yeah.
So I think let's touch on these, because I believe that women so there's a lot of targeted marketing going to this age group.
Yes.
And it's disgusting. Me and you have spoke about it before. There's all supplements, there's specific workout programs,
That's
specific
driving
meal
around the
plans.
twist.
Like there's all these things that are menopause specific. Getting like the people are getting bombarded. Like one of our members actually messaged me and said, do I need this? And it was like a menopause specialist program. And I was like, no, just carry on doing what we are doing. All that's going to be in there is what we're doing.
Yeah.
They are literally just putting menopause on it, and then they'll charge you an extra 200 quid or whatever for it. And so it's icky, it's proper icky, like how much direct like marketing there is going to this age group. And I think glucose monitoring and fasting are two of those things. I've been asked multiple times, should I be fasting for the menopause?
Yeah.
And I've also been asked about, should I do a glucose monitor? They've mentioned glucose goddess and all of that. So I'm sure you've been asked these questions as well.
I get asked them quite a bit, actually.
So let's start with glucose monitoring. What's the thoughts?
Glucose monitors monitor foods in isolation, don't they? So they don't give an accurate reading of so if someone's glucose response on a glucose monitor, they could have less of a spike with a donut than they would to a banana. And it's like, and it makes no sense. And if the result of that is that person thinks, oh, I'll keep eating donuts but not bananas, then that's like, it's ridiculous. Like, so I think there's no context around it for me. And I think if you're someone who is pre-diabetic or you have a genuine medical reason to be monitoring your glucose, then 100% go for it. But if you are somewhat the average person, I would be more concerned about what is in your diet, having some balance. There's things you can do. So like if you're eating your carbs in isolation and you've not got any protein or veg on your plate, you're going to have more of a spike than if you pair it with, and there's all that, the glucose goddess stuff about the order you eat your food and stuff like that. And
I can't remember what she says.
I think she's
putting clothes on your carbs.
Yeah. And I mean, to be honest, like, because it's a good tip, that one.
That it is something that does work.
It slows the
it slows the metabolism of your carbs. So your energy. So basically, when we have something that's high in carbohydrates, it gives us instant energy, but that can often be followed by a crash.
Yeah.
Whereas we want to have like a nice steady like increase of energy. So that makes sense.
A complete meal with protein and some fats and some,
which is what we promote anyway. So no matter who you are, what type of client you are, we're going to say have protein, carbs, fats and veggies together.
But I think as long as you're doing that, and it's up to you then whether you want to delve deeper and go into the monitoring of glucose, because I get that people are curious as well. It's when it gets to the point where they're living in fear of certain foods or they're cutting out food groups because this monitor is telling them that, like I say, a donut is giving them less of a spike. But often as well, it's the bigger picture of your glucose, of the other things that are impacting your glucose, like stress levels and sleep and exercise. And again, it always comes back, like the menopause thing, it always comes back to the same bog standard things are the best ways to monitor and to regulate your glucose as well. Yeah. Doing the basics.
The fundamentals of a healthy life,
I have clients who monitor their glucose, and as long as that doesn't have a negative impact on them, it's not something I will say, you shouldn't be doing that, because everyone's individual.
It's up to them.
But it's definitely not something I would ever say to a client, you should be monitoring your glucose.
So I agree. I think that if there's a medical reason for you to monitor your glucose, do it.
Yeah.
You will be told by a medical professional that that's what you should do.
Yes, exactly.
What I don't agree with is that these are just being sent out to everyone, like it's another thing for people to obsess about or to monitor. And I actually don't think it's helpful for the majority of people.
It's not.
Reason being is that glucose spikes are normal.
Yeah.
It's a part of our body is just doing its thing. So if you have a glucose spike, that doesn't mean that's bad.
No.
Like your body has always had glucose spikes. It always will. That is what happens. And I think that we don't need a glucose monitor to tell us that, to tell us what food to eat or what food to avoid. It's like we should be eating predominantly whole foods We even feel the difference if you eat a sheer bag of chocolate. Like you'll feel the rush and you'll feel the crash. Done it many times.
Yeah,
and you feel it. I just don't think we don't need it. Like it's not. I feel like people are wasting the time, energy, money. Yeah, like they're wasting the time, energy, and money on it when really the most sensible way forward for the majority of people is just to eat high quality, nutritious food majority of the time with a small little amount of those treats. So if you're going to eat chocolate for breakfast, lunch and dinner, of course you're not going to feel good. But if you have a bit of chocolate after your dinner each day, like you've fueled yourself well. So I do think it creates this further obsession with what to eat. It's something else to monitor. It could cause anxiety. Oh, potatoes. My body doesn't like potatoes because there's a glucose spike. Of course you had a glucose spike because you ate carbs. That's a normal bodily function.
But most people aren't eating a potato on its own, are they? That's the thing.
Yeah, you're having it with stuff.
I do think as well that age group of those 40 plus women as well, they've generally got good, decent financial means because they by that point
they're being targeted.
They're into a lot of them are either more senior positions, they're on a decent salary, they've got more disposable income and they're a lot of the time desperate. Yeah. So whatever money they have, they will think I am just going to throw at that because
I need to feel better. And so
and it drives me mad because they're preying on the availability of funds and
the vulnerability.
Vulnerability.
Yeah.
And
it's when they're targeting these, when we're targeting specific age groups, they know like this is a pain point. This is something that people this is a group that are prepared to spend on it. But also I think as well, it gives people spend money on these things and try these things because it seems like an easier option than just eating better and moving more. Like obviously that's simplifying it right down to eating better food and moving more. But that is hard for most people to do. Yeah. Like trying to implement
it's really hard.
Like totally different nutrition habits, trying to find time to exercise, that's hard. And so for a lot of people, it just feels easier to have this glucose monitor to tell them, oh no, don't eat that. Okay, I won't eat that anymore, but I will eat this donut because that's not too bad.
Because that's not maybe spike as much.
Yeah. And so what do we think about fasting then? Because that is another thing. I can't remember the name of the person who went on the big podcast.
She's a chiropractor though, isn't she?
Oh, is she?
Yeah.
She's a chiropractor?
If it's the same one as we're talking about, what's her name? It's a Dr. Mindy, is it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure she's a chiropractor.
How random.
Chiropractor by...
okay, so that's
because I saw something on, I think it might have been Amelia, had posted something about that saying, she didn't name her, she just sort of said, a certain person.
Yeah.
No, so again, I personally don't fast. I don't eat late though, so I suppose it depends how you want to define it. So I don't eat after say 7 o'clock. To me, that's not fasting, but it's probably eating within. I mean, there's nothing happens bad if I eat after 7 o'clock, but I like to have a couple of hours to digest my food before I go to bed. So
you get better sleep
it's more
quality.
time restricted. Yeah, with like more of a time restricted eating. I always say if I've got anyone who asks me about fasting, why? So if it's for fat loss, don't bother. Yeah. If it's for some other reason, or if it's a style of eating they enjoy and they find doesn't impact them like snacking or something in the night. Yeah. One thing it can help with is if someone is a nighttime snacker.
Yes. Yeah.
Because it gives them this.
It gives them a
hard cut off. You're not eating after then, and it does help with that. But it always depends on the reason for it for me. I just think I'll always, if someone says I intermittent fast, I'll be like, yeah, that's fine.
If it
why'd
works,
you do it?
Yeah.
So, even with like the skipping breakfast thing, I'll say, well, you're not skipping it if you're pushing it back. So see it that way rather than I still want you to have 3 meals, but push them back maybe if you really want to fast.
Yeah.
It's not for me to say do or don't. I won't ever tell a client to fast.
Yeah. It's not something that you would advise, but if someone chooses to do it, then
if it works for them.
The thing is, everyone is completely able, like we're not saying don't do this, don't do that.
It's the same with the glucose monitor. If you want it,
if you really want to do that. We're just letting you know that it's probably not the best way to spend your energy.
It's not for me to say. But
with fasting, I think people get a little bit confused between fasting and time restricted.
Yeah, time restricted eating is
so
different.
People think that if they are not eating between 8 and 8 the next day, that's fasting, and it's
that's
not.
Just a normal eating.
Yeah, it's just normal. You just have eating windows, and time restricted eating is like where you have these hours that you eat and these that you don't. Fasting for me is like true fasts, like 24 hours, 48 hour, 36 hours, which you do see people do.
Yeah.
And there is apparently, don't know for certain, apparently some benefits like psychologically and stuff like that for having those fasts. Never done it, never will. Not for me.
Not
I'd rather
for me.
eat. But so I think like that's something that we kind of need to understand, that a lot of people think they're fasting, but they're not fasting.
Yeah, it's like
it's just time restricted eating.
You could say I was technically, couldn't you? Because I don't. But
every single person fasts.
Yeah, because
when they go to sleep and they don't eat.
I think the one thing I always ask is sort of like, what's the period? Because if most people tend to do is 18-6.
Yeah.
Now that to me is just
time restricted.
Yeah, that's all right, because in a 6-hour period, you can still get some. You can get, like, as long as. If someone's fasting to an extreme amount, they're going to end up nutrient deficient. So that's more what I'm sort of thinking. And if you are strength training, how does that interact with your training? How do you feel? Do you feel like dog shit all day, basically? If you do, then you might want to come away from it.
Yeah.
Or if they still like to fast every now and then, like, play around with the window or something.
Yeah.
It's not something I really get involved in, to be honest. I will sort of say to the client, I want you to be spreading your meals out across the day. That's gonna sort of manage your energy best. It's gonna manage your hunger best. But you don't have to have your breakfast at 7 o'clock in the morning.
See, this is the misconception.
If you don't want it,
yeah.
have it. If you want to start eating at 12 o'clock, that's your breakfast. So have your breakfast at 12 o'clock. I'm not, like, I don't care as long as that works for you. Like,
so this is the misconception with it. So is that like, they're like, oh, well, I like intermittent fasting, so I can't eat 3 meals a day. I'm like, well, you can eat those 3 meals a day. Just because it's called breakfast doesn't mean it needs to be out at 7 in the morning.
It means breaking the fast.
Yeah, that's exactly what it means.
So whatever time you eat it and whatever it consists of.
Yeah,
if it's a sandwich, it's still your breakfast.
Yeah, it could be 7, it could be 11, and you don't need to eat breakfast food.
That's what I mean.
It can be you say, it could be a sandwich, could be a curry. Like, I've often ate like a pasta salad, like, as the first meal a day. Like, it doesn't, I think people just see it as like breakfast. It's got to be oats or yogurt or eggs or something. No. It doesn't. It can just be your first meal. People eat steak and eggs for breakfast. Fran eats like chicken and rice for breakfast. It's just the first meal of the day. But I'm the same as you, is that like, as long as you're getting enough nutrition in, because I think it is important that we get enough nutrients in. We need enough protein.
That's what I'm most focused on.
Yeah, we need enough calories to make sure that energy is well managed. If you are strength training, you need protein to help you recover. If you're going through the perimenopause and you're trying to build muscle, like, not eating enough protein is not going to...
And also trying to keep your regulate your hormones as best you can, then fasting puts your body under stress, doesn't it? So if your body's already under a certain amount of stress, then fasting for women is definitely something that you would have to have strong reasons for doing it, I think.
One thing that I would say as well, and I think that this is important and massively underestimated, is if people are training in the morning, you shouldn't be fasting until lunchtime. Like, like, realistically, for you to get the most out of that session, we should try and have something small beforehand. If you can't tolerate that, then at least eat within an hour or two
that's
of your session. Like, if you've done a heavy strength session, eat within a couple of hours, then that nutrition is going to help with the recovery. And I just feel like you're leaving stuff on the table, leaving results on the table if you are not fueling yourself after that tough workout.
And also, if you're training early, so say you train at 6 a.m, your meal the night before should be a decent one.
Yeah.
So it's all like, there's ways you can play around with, like, there's no sort of, like, you don't have to, it's like not like the olden days where you had your breakfast at 8, your lunch was always at like midday, and your tea was at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
It's like, finds an eating pattern that works for you.
Yeah.
That doesn't have you, if you find it's leading to behaviours like raiding the cupboards, you're starving at
Snapping,
night, then it's not right for you.
Yeah.
But if time restricted eating actually helps you in a fat loss phase, not because you're fasting, because that's got nothing to do with it, because you're stopping yourself from overeating.
Snacking.
Then be my guest.
Yeah.
I would just, if I know someone's fasting, I'll just keep an eye on how they're feeling. But on every check-in I do, I always ask about the energy levels, the hunger levels, and the mood. So as long as they're all in check, it's whatever works for the individual, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It is very, I do think it's just something that we're asked about a lot, isn't it? Fasting,
a lot.
Should I be intermittent fasting? Is this going to help with my hormones and all of that? And it's just like every single person is individual, and you're like eating in a different way. So like for me, for example, I wake up at 5 a.m. and I eat then. But then I eat, that's like a half of my breakfast.
Yeah,
and then I have the other half of my breakfast later on. And then I'll have big lunch, big dinner.
Yeah.
And so that's just because I know I need to manage my energy well throughout the day, because I'm in the gym in the mornings and all of that. And so it is all dependent on how you feel and how your life actually looks when you train, what your work day looks like. You know, think about people who do night shifts and all of that. Their eating pattern.
Yeah.
They're still having a breakfast, even if that's at 5 p.m. when they've woke up.
That's still their breakfast.
Yeah.
I think there is that misconception that you've got to be having, like you say, oats or eggs or something.
Yeah. And it's got to be at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
When I've been in the gym, like in the mornings, and you will have definitely experienced this as well. If I have someone in at 6 a.m., 7 a.m., even 8, and they're like, oh, I feel sick. Oh, I feel dizzy today. Or like they just don't feel good in the session. The first question I always ask is, have you eaten?
Yeah.
And if they're like, oh no, I haven't, but I'd never normally do. I'm like, okay, well, what about last night? And they're like, oh, I skipped my tea, or I had my tea at 4 o'clock with the kids, or I only had a soup or whatever. And I'm like, well, there's your answer.
Your day before, it's not like your body doesn't like have cut-offs, does it? It just needs to be continually fed on a nice
amount of energy.
And a nice consistent basis. You know, so I get that a lot as well. And I will say, if you can't eat first thing in the morning, then make sure your tea is a decent meal.
Yeah. So do we feel like there's anything else to...
You could probably go on forever, couldn't you, on this? But no,
I do feel like
they're the main things, It's such an individual thing. I mean, the one thing I was going to say is the menopause workouts thing.
Yeah, let's talk about that. What do they look like? Have you ever
I think, I don't actually know. I mean, I think I've seen people saying like they take all the high impact stuff out. You know, like you turn into a granny at 40 and like... I could have, like, when I you know, because obviously I did the qualifications and stuff, I could have slapped menopause on a program and sold that to people
for double the price,
and all it would be is the exact same as I'm doing with everyone else. So my girls who are over 40 are not decrepit.
No.
Do you know, like, so you don't start, like, their menopause workout is the same as somebody, like, it's an individual thing. So if you're working around, you know, certain, like if I had someone in who was 70, I probably wouldn't have it like doing box jumps or something, which I wouldn't have any of them doing anyway. Just don't do them.
Box jumps are fucking
shit.
Them.
But like, do you know, like I wouldn't have them doing like high impact. But
babies, would you have a 70-year-old doing babies?
No. Well, what would they gain from it?
Well, there's not much benefit to babies anyway, other than to tire you out.
Yeah.
So that's what, and I say to the girls in the gym, these are just to tire you out. Like,
but there's, and also actually, it's being shown that doing like more high intensity stuff. There's so high impacts and high intensity are very different things, aren't they?
Yeah.
But high intensity workouts are really good for 40 plus women, menopause and stuff. So I don't really actually know what's in a lot of these programs.
I would be interested. Obviously, I'm not going to spend my money on one.
I know, this is the thing. It's like more the curiosity.
I'd be really interested as to what they're trying to spin as a menopause specialist workout. I know that, now this is true for a lot of my online clients, because of the difficulty with sleep and energy. I do know that a lot of them respond really well when I give them half an hour workouts.
Yeah, shorter.
Yeah. So for example, rather than having them doing like, you know, big lifts and resting and just being in the gym for an hour, I'll give them a few supersets just to hammer through half an hour and then they're done. And I feel like that gets over the head. Like, so if you're tired and you know you've only got half an hour, you can handle it. But if you know you're going in and you've got to do a big leg day, set up a barbell and all of that, then I feel like that can sometimes get the better of you and you wouldn't do it. So I do feel like a lot of my older clients do really respond well to those 30-minute workouts.
I often think though that's actually more of an age thing than like it depends on how menopause is presenting with the person. So if you're not someone whose sleep's impacted, you could be sort of like in your 50s or 60s and not have to adapt your training. But if you are someone who is suffering with that, you could be in your early 40s and need to adapt your training. It's person to person, isn't it? So,
and I'm saying,
I wouldn't like adapt sort of what they do. It would, like you say, maybe shorter workouts and a bit more rest in between sets or something, or the frequency that they train throughout the week. I'd say to them, space them out more or something. But yeah, it's the same as we were saying before about you don't hit 40 and your metabolism falls off a cliff. Your body doesn't like just turn to jelly. You can still get strong and you don't, like I'm nearly 43 and I would like to think that like I'm not getting weaker each year.
Some of the women in Lift and Glow
are amazing.
In their 40s and 50s are stronger than the younger ones, like better technique than the younger ones, more determination, I have to say. And so you definitely, I just feel like there's so much evidence everywhere to say that age is just a number. You can do so much as you get older. And I'm saying about 30-minute workouts, but thinking about that, I also give that to mums who struggle with sleep. It's just something that can,
and it might only be for a period of time.
Yeah, it's just something that can reduce that like barrier to getting it done. So yeah, I think menopause specific programs, diets, products, I'm not on board with them.
No.
I think the fundamentals will always win, and we can't get around the fact there's no supplement that you can take. We haven't spoke about supplements, but there is no supplement that you can take that will undo a poor lifestyle. And when I say poor lifestyle, poor nutrition choices, not exercising, not managing stress, and not focusing on sleep, drinking too much alcohol, all those things. You can take all of the menopause symptoms. You can drink the hormone tea. You can have whatever. There's all sorts of like menopause specific like tonics and everything, isn't there?
Yeah, there's all kinds.
And I just think it doesn't matter how much of that you do, the fundamentals will always make the biggest difference. You need to lift weights, you need to go for walks, you need to sleep well, manage stress, and obviously and eat well. And it doesn't, I think one thing that we need to stress is that might sound overwhelming because I'm like, you need to do this and this. It doesn't have to be overwhelming.
No, I will always take everything one step at a time with people.
Small.
But usually the first thing I would start with would be sleep.
Yeah. It's a good place to start. It actually is.
I had a new client not long ago and the first thing we looked at was the sleep, and she was like, I was really surprised that we're even like...
But it makes so much sense because of how much sleep affects everything else. So we've got to sleep
well and then everything else, because if you're not nothing feels as overwhelming then. So people are generally surprised, but the first thing I will want to know is, how do you sleep? If there's someone who says that they are struggling at that stage.
Yeah. If you crack sleep, then nutrition is easier, exercise is easier. So that's like a really good place to start. And so if you are listening to this and you want to make changes, then sleep, start there, do that, focus on that for a few weeks, and then think, right, okay, so how can I now improve my nutrition? Work on that for a few weeks. Now, how can I make myself a little bit more active? It doesn't need to be an overnight overhaul. And I think that's the case with everyone. Like we try and do too much too soon. Don't overhaul and overwhelm yourself. Literally just one little thing at a time. Starting with sleep is a great place, and then adding on little things as you go.